This podcast is part of the Gonna Geek Network. The opinions expressed may not represent other podcasts or affiliates of Gonna Geek. Check out more podcasts at GonnaGeek.com and get ready because geekness starts in 3, 2, 1.
You come across a podcast about critically loved movies and the three geeks that test them. Your fear heightens as you notice it's October, and what was Arthouse legends becomes something darker, more sinister. You notice adult language and content and carefully guard the ears of the innocent. In the back of your mind, you know that spoilers are ahead and opt to watch the movie before journeying forward. You take one last breath of air before entering
the Arthouse of Horror.
Welcome to Halloween. This is the MovieDude Eric, and I was the one that psst at you, and along with me are...
Well, this is Kent, and I just wish people would learn how to drive in this town, because, they just come straight up, and then you flip around, and then a police officer hits your car. I don't know. It's all confusing to me.
Listen, this is John Lobster here. I don't want to sound like a Puritan about animation, but there's something about this stop-motion stuff that just seems like witchcraft to me. I don't know. I don't trust it.
In this episode, we're discussing ParaNorman, featuring the voices of Cody Smith-McPhee, Tucker Albarese, Anna Kendrick, Casey Affleck, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Leslie Mann, Jeff Garlin, and directed by Chris Butler and Sam Fell. Gentlemen, I cannot tell you just how much I love Laika's animation. I fell in love with it when I first saw Coraline, and since then they have done nothing but great animation, great stories. In fact, I say that this is better than Pixar, in my opinion. Are you familiar with any of Laika's work? Have you seen any of their work, out of curiosity?
I have not seen any Laika films until now.
Yeah, this is my. I feel so bad because I've been familiar with their stuff. I own Coraline somewhere, and just have never put it in. And the box trolls looked cool, and I know Kubo and the Two Strings came out this year. But this is, and I love stop motion animation. Like, I'm a huge fan of like the Wallace and Gromit things, and I know they've been able to do so much stuff now with like 3D printing for the models and things that they use, and that's so cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is my first go round. But I had heard good things about ParaNorman, so
yes. And in many of these circles, this is considered one of the new Halloween classics. I know it's only been out just a few years. It came out, I believe, in 2010, but it's garnered it's garnered a lot of attention with the horror crowds and with the same crowds that kind of fell in love with The Nightmare Before Christmas, which we did last year. And so I was really hoping to talk about this movie simply just because it kind of found a place really quickly in the annals of Halloween movies. And again, the thing is that Laika is a studio that really doesn't get the attention it deserves. This year we had Kubo and the Two Strings that came out, and no one saw it. And to me, that is one of the greatest sins, because it is one of the best original films this year, and it didn't take off. And it didn't take off here, it didn't take off internationally, it just floundered. And if we can't give attention to a great movie like that, let's talk about what I would say is their best film. Now, ParaNorman is a very unique film in the sense that this thing is quite scary, and yet at the same time a comedy, and it just blends. This is in the same realm as...
it's playing with a lot of tropes. It's playing with a lot of horror and supernatural, paranormal themes. And at the same time, it has a visual style that is very I don't even know, like, what they're doing with the stop motion figurines, it doesn't seem like stop motion. Like if you've watched Wallace and Gromit, or if you've watched even Pixar films and seen 3D computer modeling as animation, the detail, the level of detail, the attention, the creativity, the experimentation in what they can actually do with the camera angles and what they can do with special effects in terms of making ghosts and things like that happen and float. And it's kind of crazy what they're doing with this.
Well, the blend of horror and comedy that comes from this movie kind of reminds me a lot of Sam Raimi and the Evil Dead movies.
Oh yeah,
specifically. It is creepy and goofy at the same time in a way that you really just don't get, even with a lot of horror comedies. You know, we talked about What We Do in the Shadows. We mentioned a few other horror comedies that have come out. None of them have this kind of laugh and cringe at the same time that this film does very well.
There are certainly some puns in this film that
very much.
You know, I felt
yes.
I felt right at home. I'll say that in terms of some of the humor that went along with this.
Yeah.
But I guess the first thing that I always think about with any animated film is the voice cast, right? And I think let's start with kind of who
before we do, I wanted to
then...
give Ken a chance to talk about what he thinks about this film, or the visual style.
Visual style, it my brain was telling me it was traditional animation. Then I had to remember, no, this is all stop motion, and that was just bringing me to a new level of holy crap, these guys are working. I have to see special features, which I want to say, as a side note, special features on the generic DVD that I got really cheap at one of the big stores. Better special features than a lot of
Did you say for the post-credit scene by any chance?
No.
Oh, would they show how they make him basically, and he gets up? Yeah.
One thing that Laika does with all of their films is that they show either at the beginning of the credit sequence or the end of the credit sequence how they create either a scene or they create a character, and
they basically made Norman piece by piece, poured the mold, got him going, and he stands up and he walks around the desk.
Yeah, it's a it just reminds you of just the artistry that this film has, and it's a great tip of the hat to the animators.
The hard work that goes into stop motion.
Yeah. I know. I remember the trailer for Box Trolls being like almost a behind the scenes thing of how they started putting it together. It was like a music video that started with the pieces, and then they put the pieces together and had the characters moving and doing stuff, which was kind of nifty.
Well, the post-credit scene for that, I think, is the best of the Laika is for Box Trolls, but that's just my opinion. It's on Netflix for the next week, or in the case of recording, one day, 24 hours.
Yeah, plug it in before you start handing out candy today. So.
But all the same though, you're bringing up the puns and the comedy and the inspiration.
Well, I mean, let's talk about who's in it. Let's get that out of the way, and then we can kind of go into. So we hear their voices in our heads when we're telling the jokes. Cody Smith-McPhee is an up-and-coming child actor.
He was Nightcrawler this year.
Yeah, he was. He's done a ton of stuff.
Okay.
Although for me, he'll always be Boy from The Road. Just a great performance. Have y'all seen The Road from Cormac McCarthy's?
Yeah.
That
Vigo.
Now, that might have been on the Arthouse of Horror list in itself. That is a very bleak movie.
Scary movie. And I think there are voices in here that you recognize. Obviously, you instantly recognize John Goodman. My fiance instantly recognized Jeff Garlin. I, of course, from Curb Your Enthusiasm. She from The Goldbergs. Anna Kendrick. I almost missed the fact that it was Anna Kendrick because she plays a very un-Anna Kendrick-like character in the film. So
this was her Twilight years Anna Kendrick.
Yeah, I guess. But I didn't quite go there. I was like, oh, who is that? And then I realized it was her. Obviously, McLovin is McLovin in pretty much anything he does. Yeah. He does a voice in this. He does a voice in How to Train Your Dragon, and it's pretty much
the same.
They pretty much all sound the same. Yeah, because it's just his voice and it's what he does. Here he's the bully. There he was, I guess, the bullied. But anybody else that jumps out at you?
Leslie Mann from the Judd Apatow movies.
Yeah, I mean she's in the movie. I don't think that her character or her voice really stands out.
It did for me.
The drama teacher, I think, is
Lois?
a fun one. Yeah, who did her voice?
That was Lois from Family Guy. Crap, I forgot the actress's name.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, but no, there were actually several others that were definitely.
I noticed that the lead Pilgrim, the lead Puritan, was Bernard Hill, who's a British actor, best known to American audiences as saying things like, "Where was Gondor when the Westfold fell? It shall be a red dawn, ere the sun rises." I'm quoting Lord of the Rings and King Theoden.
Or Women and Children First. Or did we forget that he was the captain?
Titanic, yeah. I just think of him, anytime I see him in something, I'm like, oh, King Theoden's in this. You have no power here.
And one other voice that I have to mention just because, I don't know about y'all, but I recognize his voice right away. Elaine Stritch as Grandma. She is, I listened to her stand-up comedy. She's a Broadway actress. I listened to Broadway musical soundtracks, and she was a part of Company, and she sang one of the best versions of Ladies Who Lunch ever made. And if you ever know that musical, you know what I'm talking about. It's a very... she's a very powerful actress, and she actually just passed away recently. I believe she was like 90 at the time. So she left a legacy of great musicals and great comedy behind her. But we also have a Huxtable in the house.
Yeah.
Tempest Bledsoe, believe that is not Denise. It was
the sheriff.
Yeah.
Ken said it was the sheriff. I don't.
No, she's sheriff. I was just trying to name which Huxtable. It wasn't Denise.
Who in the Cosby Show she was? Yeah.
The middle child.
Yeah.
Sure.
The forgettable one. Okay, the
yeah.
Not Theo and not Raven Simone, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
Somewhere in
not the oldest one. So.
And then of course Batfleck's brother. Let's not forget him.
I just saw him in real life in a movie called The Finest Hours. Yeah. Not necessarily a great movie, but a really kind of
he's an Academy Award nominee for the assassination of Jesse James.
Right.
Which is a great film, and he is a great actor. I absolutely love him.
My point on The Finest Hours was I made a joke about how it was Angel and Captain Kirk have to save Batman's brother on the orders of Nero / Bruce Banner. One Bruce Banner, I guess. But yeah. So that's a fun cast movie, not exactly like the best movie, but cool story, true story. But
it's an okay movie. I'll give it that much. But all right, are there any other voices that we're kind of forgetting?
Oddly, with voice actor casts in animation, I typically don't register it till afterwards that I'm reading the cast.
Right,
and going,
so you see the credits,
yes,
that's who that was. Now I see it.
But no, but the voices that I caught, I caught pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a couple that I didn't recognize right off the bat. But I just gotta say that I love the fact that this is. Especially considering the subject matter that we're going to be getting in with this particular movie, it had a cast that felt authentic to the story it was telling, right? I mean, when you hear Jeff Garland's voice and the way that he kind of antagonizes his son, that he does kind of have that TV father type thing, right? The Homer Simpson quality.
It's a sitcom setup, right? I mean, it's a sitcom setup that they're all living in, and that would almost be enough for the movie to be like, oh, our son then, ghost grandma, and ghost grandma is a character in the movie or in the character in the sitcom, and it just kind of like goes from there, and you could just have that be the movie. Now this takes it into a bigger story that it's kind of the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs take on the supernatural, right? Like you've got the one kid who's weird and everybody kind of like indulges him but also kind of bullies him, and
no one indulges him. They all pick on him.
Yeah, everybody bullies him.
There is not one person, with the exception of Neil, who...
Yeah, Neil.
And even Neil can, can be kind of harsh on him on that. It's like, really, he really befriends him so that he can speak to his dog.
Yeah. So I feel like this is, again, it's enough of a setup that you don't have to have the thing at the end, but the thing at the end is the thing that like brings everyone together. The fact that there's this big threat and he's really the only one that has a clue about how to deal with it.
Well,
right?
It's the sins of the past that's come across to the current generation, and it's one generation having to deal with a wrong that has been going on for hundreds of years, and especially considering...
and not only going on, but capitalized on.
Yeah.
I think that's like an interesting thing as you're going through the town, and you're like, oh, this is like Salem. Like they have capitalized.
They're
on...
celebrating the murder that they committed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And making money on it, and in fact, it's kind of the town's bread and butter in terms of keeping everyone in business. That this thing happened, and they have they have witchy wieners on Main Street that you can point at and say, oh, yep, that's the thing. So I think that's kind of an interesting take on it. It's not that this is something that happened that was just kind of swept under the rug. It's actively celebrated.
Yeah. But what about you, Ken? What are you taking from all this?
Well, pretty much the same thing. I mean, you have the background of...
But this film is really kind of more focusing on bullying, which it's a subject that I think that doesn't really get a lot of attention, especially in children's films.
Right.
Because, if you really break it down, most of these characters either fall into one of two camps. Either they are bullied or they're bullies. They either pick on somebody or they are being picked on. And especially when we get to the end of the film and we realize that there's kind of a shift in that dynamic, that it has a tragic element to it, because especially with Norman, he's a likable kid. He's kind of weird. He definitely in about a few years he's gonna have green hair and eyeliner and probably a few tattoos. Hopefully not the Joker looking, but I could definitely see him being a hot topic teen, right? He is an odd duck, and he's but for the most part he's a good kid, and people are picking on him for no good reason, and he takes it in stride. He doesn't, he doesn't.
Well, he knows he's different. Yeah. I mean, he knows that it's not a normal thing to see dead people.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of
what's
it'd be a little
Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense was way less well adjusted, way less adjusted to this than Norman has. Norman has kind of grown up with this. It's probably freaked him out, but now he's kind of absorbed it into part of his routine.
Well, Grandma helps with that.
Grandma helps, but at the same time, there's the sense that these dead people really only can interact with him. We don't see hippie ghost and the lady in the tree interacting with each other, but they'll all talk to Norman. And so he's like their connection to the world of the living at the same, like it's a two-way kind of conversation. So I
they
think
don't
for
interact
Norman,
with one another. I mean, hell, even the judge and the zombies, they can't interact with the witch. You know, they have to use Norman as an intermediary.
Right. Sure. So I think that for what it's worth with the movie does a good job of showing that, yes, this is a really freaky thing, but Norman himself has adjusted to it about as well as any person can without being driven crazy by this. And I think the bullying aspect is really interesting because in the time of the Pilgrims, someone like Norman would have been stoned or hung or burned at the stake, whereas Norman gets graffiti on his locker and people, slap his books out of his hand, but nobody's trying to string him up in the town square. But at the same time, it's treating someone poorly because they're different.
I'm a little surprised the school hasn't sent him to counseling or something. Oh, he keeps imagining.
I think they already have. I think that they consider him a lost cause at this point.
Which also, if the school has got to be aware of the bullying, which brings up
because what's the counselor's going to say? You don't really see dead people. You're just acting out, right? And he's going to be like, well, no, I really do see dead people. And
it brings up the greatest lie that in high school. The school does not tolerate bullying. Yeah, they do at the school, obviously. Not funny, but it's an obvious.
Well, I mean, there's only so much you can do with bullying, and at this particular point, I think that in this particular film, we see that it isn't just Norman that's bullied. We do see another character that is also getting bullied as well, but for a very different reason. Another thing that I find very interesting about this movie is we don't really have any smart characters. Even Norman, to an extent, does have a mental. He does have mental blockage. The grown-ups are as clueless as the children. The children are at various levels of intelligence. I mean, even the smart kid that gets phoned up to find out about the history of the. Of what happened to the witch, she can't even answer the question, right?
She has to Google it. Yeah. Wait, let me use a computer.
But I have to admit, it's just, I mean, this entire cast of characters is, they're not firing on all cylinders. Let's just put it that way. Again,
I think it's part of the town's genetics, and maybe not everyone in the town is descended from the Pilgrims, but it's kind of in the water that you're not the most enlightened group, you're not the most open-minded people, welcoming of outsiders and people who are different. I mean, they probably do a brisk trade in tourism. They probably they capitalize on the history, but at the same time, they're not open to perspectives that broadly differ from their own. And I think in that kind of insular environment, there's always going to be a certain failure to deal with new problems, right? I mean, we see that time and time again, that you need outside blood. You need a fresh perspective to move forward.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from on that, and I think that Norman, even though he does he gets picked on, you don't really see anybody that's telling him that you don't actually hear dead people. Even the bully seems to accept the fact that he hears dead people.
Well, his dad is against it.
Flies don't talk.
Yeah,
I mean, I think his dad wants him to not do it, or not, if he does, don't acknowledge it or talk about it.
Yeah.
But I think the bully smashes the fly, and he's like, well, now talk to the fly. And Norman's like, well, flies don't talk.
Yeah.
Even if I could see the dead fly, it's not like it's going to say something to me.
I honestly think he could. I mean, He doesn't retort. He doesn't bounce back. And the thing is that the film does a great thing where sometimes we see the ghost, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we see it from Norman's perspective, sometimes we see it from the outside.
The fly had accomplished all he wanted to in this life,
Yes,
and he was
he moved
instantly
on.
transported to the next plane. Like, he was good. Like, he landed
But it
on
was
the
sudden.
turd.
He didn't
and
realize
he
it
ate,
happened.
and then he landed on the cupcake, and he was happy, and he died. You know, he was gone. So, I don't know if I mean, they kind of play fast and loose with the rules of, you know, who sticks around and who doesn't. It makes sense that when John Goodman's character keels over of a heart attack, that he does have unfinished business and needs to stick around. It doesn't necessarily make sense that Grandma sticks around and knits on the couch.
Well, she said she'd look over him.
She'd already said why she's sticking around, and she's
to
choosing
watch
to
out
stick
for
around.
Norman.
Yeah.
I guess. You wonder, is this a family thing that's gone down through generations in Norman's family?
I think it is.
No, they made that clear. They
Yeah.
made that clear as well. This has been in his family.
Yeah, it looks like if Goodman is Mr. Pendergast, but his name's Babcock. It was through the mom's side, and he's the inheritor of.
And they actually say when mom and dad have that fight, you know, he's saying this comes from your line of the family.
Yeah.
You know that you know, so she's obviously, I guess if we were go to formal names, she would be Sandra Pendergast, Pendergast Babcock. So it would have come from his mother's side. On top of that, Grandma doesn't ever mention it, so it's not. So she isn't aware of it, and we know that she is on his dad's side. So again, the movie's cunning in that sense. It doesn't have to announce. It does so very subtly. It does it in gestures. You don't have to have massive speeches told about what this is about, with the exception of the one between Norman and Aggie. And the thing is that in a way, I appreciate it that way. You know, I appreciate that the film just allows you to understand the relationships of the characters the way it does, and on top of that, that it has this weird look to it. You know, we mentioned the animation style being kind of off kilter. It definitely has that that claymation look to it, but it also just, I don't know, just something otherworldly about it, and especially with where the film's subject matter. I love the transparent look of the ghosts.
Yes.
Specifically, I love the slimy look of the or not slimy, but kind of rotten element to the zombies. And how things fall apart. You know, like when the ear comes off.
Yes.
You know that. And understand, I actually when I saw it in theaters, I took a group of 10-year-olds with me. They were freaked out by this movie. You know, they were freaked out by what this movie does. And this is a PG movie. Remember, this is PG.
Well, so was Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was back when there was no such thing as PG-13.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as PG-13. This, you know, very different.
I think that this kind of does push the boundary too. And I think if this were any medium but stop motion, I don't know if they would have gotten away with some of the stuff that's in here. It's kind of like you could
the
get
first 5 minutes with that fake horror movie.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was a perfect send up of slasher films, right?
Yeah. It's a great movie within a movie.
I mean, even to the point where the girl is screaming with the monster coming, and he's still coming slowly, and she's waiting there for him, still screaming.
My favorite is when he sticks his arms through the door,
and then he sticks his legs through the door.
Like,
and then his head through the door.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I think that this movie gets away with a lot because of the mode that it's delivering it. Mm-hmm. I think that certainly if it were a live action, it would be a lot like the MPAA would look and be like, no, you're not doing this movie with real kids. Like, this is not gonna fly. And I think that
Netflix will.
To the extent that computer animation has progressed by this point, I think even that they would they might look at and be like, nah, it's too real. You're doing too much with with that. The stop motion, I think that they get away with a lot because you see a lot of things. It's just like in the Lego movie, how they show characters getting like blown apart and stuff like that. But they're Legos. It's okay. It's fairly bloodless.
Does anyone else get a Goonies vibe off of this movie?
Yes. Now that you mention it, it sort of does.
Sure.
Because you have people who don't like each other thrown together, and they just kind of agree, yeah, we got to stop this.
Well, it's not that they even agree. It's just that, I love how this group comes together because basically Norman was going to do this by himself.
Yeah.
And the bully had targeted him, so he tagged along even though he wasn't wanted. And then his sister got his best friend and his best friend's brother involved. And so, but it all makes sense. The way that they set this up, it makes sense that this is how it comes apart or comes together. And of course, with, zombies chasing you, you're not going to just split up. You're going to naturally want to stay together because, things that bite.
What do you mean? Let's split up. We could do more damage that way.
But I got to admit, though, I love the twist in the middle when the zombies come into town and they're the ones that are the victims.
Yeah, everybody attack. Yeah.
I loved it. I love the redneck with the shotgun in the back, just like...
The redneck with the shotgun?
Keep it there the entire time?
Around town here, there's so many bumper stickers and just tire covers that say Zombie Response Team. And you could just imagine if a small group of zombies that were not hell-bent on making other zombies just wandered in. They're gone in minutes. I mean, it's
the best argument for why a zombie apocalypse would never actually happen, at least in America.
Yeah.
It's because everyone's armed to the teeth. I know it's considered like a stereotype of Americans by people in other countries that everybody has a gun. But yeah, pretty much, depending on where you live, legally or illegally, people are packing. So it's not gonna go as far. Certainly in, I guess, rural Massachusetts where this is portrayed. It's that's where the revolution started because the British tried to take away the guns. It's not. Yeah. It's still just as well armed or whatever. And if it's not guns, they'll have their baseball bats from the Red Sox or whatever. They'll be fine. Zombie apocalypse not going to be an issue, I don't think. But no. I love the reveal when you find out, through Norman, because he can talk to them, that they're scared and they're just trying to get Norman to help them.
Yeah, and I also love when we get that review when he tries to talk to the witch. Then I'll be honest here, the backstory of Aggie.
Oh God,
it hit me in a spot that I wasn't expecting. When you hear about a witch, the last thing you think about is a scared little girl, who's been tormented by grown-ups, and who ultimately is murdered by these grown-ups. The movie outright calls it murder, what they've done. And in her power, she killed them as well. And because of her power, she has the ability to torment them as they tormented her. And you get the sense that at least once before, she's pulled them from the dead. And the only way that they could keep her... keep her from doing this is by putting her to sleep or keeping her asleep through this storybook. And especially with how they handle this, how the town realizes Norman and what he's capable of doing. I love the fact that at first when he's trying to call down on the witch from the tower, they were willing to burn him because, obviously since he speaks in tongues, then
he summoned evil. The witch. He summoned the ghosts, yes.
And that they were willing to do it when he came out with the zombies until the other kids stopped him. When the normies, stood with him. At that point, they put down the torches and pitchforks, literally, in this sense, which I thought was a hilarious little nod to this type of movie. No, the bowling ball, I think, is the part where I lost it. And of course the final act. I'm sorry, but the confrontation between Norman and Aggie, and when she finally tells her story. I mean, you can't not be emotional about that. You know, there's only one thing I wish that the film would have done, and to me, I probably would have cried if it actually did this. But if the zombies had actually been able to apologize to Aggie, come on,
that might be
that would
give
just
some
hit you in the
closure.
heart.
Yeah, I think you see the look on their face when they
Yeah.
go from zombie to ghost and disappear and blow away. And I think that's enough. Again,
it is, but come on,
this is a movie that isn't. I think in a lot of the Pixar films would have gone that route. Like they would have said, okay, we got to make everybody cry. When are we going to make everybody cry? And it's, what's our bing bong moment, I guess is the best way to put it. And this film I have to respect for not saying, like not giving, okay, we got to overplay our hand a little bit and get people to tear up. Pixar can do it very subtly and very well, almost when they don't mean to. And I think sometimes the filmmakers are surprised when they show it, that people like, oh, you're like crying up at this. Wow, I didn't realize that this was an emotional moment. This film doesn't overplay that, which I actually give it a lot of credit for. It just lets things kind of be, and then you just go with it, right? It's fine.
Well, Ken, would you have wanted that tear-jerking moment, or are you glad that it had the restraint?
I'm fine with the way that part ended, with the ghosts going away. They didn't need a apology from them, but I think they knew what they did wrong.
Oh no, we see that when the judge speaks to Norman.
Yeah, and she doesn't need that apology. I think she just needs somebody to talk to.
I love the transition from anger to fear to sadness to rage that Aggie has throughout that entire confrontation, when she's literally pushing him around when he's trying to get her to calm down. The way that when she finally comes to a corporeal self, the non-electric self.
Yeah.
And she looks at her hands. The animation on this, the emotion that this animation is able to pull across. We're talking about a wide range of emotions. And especially from a film that had no problem playing pun jokes and sexual innuendo, and, up there in his room playing with his Ouija board, kind of references. It's weird to see this kind of highbrow, lowbrow kind of
mixed
stuff in a film that's both. Is this even targeted for kids? It was kind of.
I think it's targeted for teens or tweens. I don't know if this is necessarily shooting at 10-year-old and under. I think this is shooting for 10 to 16, 17, maybe, and then it's broad enough that it could play to adults, and I guess you could get away with it with younger kids, but I don't know if they'd have much to enjoy with this one.
I get you. What about you, Ken?
I think it's a wide enough targeting. It may be don't bring under 10, but from 10 up, everyone. It's trying to appeal everywhere along that spectrum, because it is very... there's jokes only adults will get, and there's enough stuff there for kids.
And in
that way, it reminds me of old Looney Tunes. Bugs Bunny's making a joke that you don't get until you rewatch that cartoon 15 years later, and you go, "Oh my god!
Oh wow!
What the hell?"
And again, it's kind of almost a Scooby-Doo type story, except it's got a little bit more weight, obviously, than a Scooby-Doo story. But it's interesting. It's an interesting kind of...
Well, we find ourselves really wanting to know why. Why is the thing that really drives this movie.
And it's an interesting kind of demographic when you think about it that they're going after. It's not one... I don't think you could argue that this is really a 4-quadrant film. I don't think that it is, and I think that most of Laika's films aren't necessarily going after a demographic. They're going after, I guess, a type of viewer that likes that type of movie, and those can be young or old or whatever, but it's not going for the broad appeal.
They make choices, and those choices are unique, and I think that's kind of one of the things that I really appreciate about Laika as a studio is that, especially coming from Coraline, which is batshit crazy. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just it's that kind of movie. Even freakier in visual effects than ParaNorman, in my opinion. And yet they can do something like Box Trolls, which is more family friendly and goofy and silly, and then Kubo and the Two Strings, which is a culmination of all these things. Kubo, I think, is kind of if there's one movie that Laika, if you had only one movie to explain what Laika Studios is, Kubo and the Two Strings would definitely be that movie. But ParaNorman is just, it hits emotional centers here that you don't expect with anything outside of a Pixar movie.
Here's a background question I want to ask.
What is your favorite pun, Lobster?
Yeah.
I'm now kind of curious because you've.
Oh my gosh, I'd have to watch it again and go through them.
But would you really like My Boyfriend?
Yeah.
That's I wanted to kind of comment on that too. I think that was like I don't know. I spoiled it when I
set up. That was a perfect setup.
No, it was very well set up. I accidentally spoiled it when I read one of the reviews for it. And as I was kind of sitting down to watch the movie, I think that's fine. I think that's a good indication of who your target demo is for a film.
Yeah.
Because I feel like teens and young, like just shy of teen age kids will kind of understand that, this is, when was the movie made?
2010.
2010, yeah.
Actually,
So in 2010, 2012, gay couples are a thing. Like, kids are brought up, I think, by and large, accepting of that. I think it's pretty much commonplace that in every school or in every class, somebody has two moms, somebody has two dads. Like, it's fine. And so that's like a joke that's like a joke, but not like a joke. You know what I mean? It's just like,
it's
like
done for humor.
It's a subversion of the expectation that this character and that character are going to be love interests.
Well, no,
right?
it's the joke that she's been pining over him the entire movie,
right?
And it's like that,
and she's like, "Oh yeah, okay."
And it's weird she doesn't already know this about him. For
No, but the thing the thing is that he's a mystery.
And it could have been like, "Oh, you'll love my girlfriend," but he's not. He's like, "Oh, you love my boyfriend."
Yeah,
you'll love my boyfriend. And that's kind of a good. It's kind of a good look at who the film is kind of meant for. And I think honestly, younger audiences are probably more accepting of that kind of a joke than older audiences would be. They'd be like, "Oh, what? You mean what?"
Yeah.
But kids today would be like, "Yeah, cool,
Mm-hmm.
whatever." All right, you guys, I know we're moving through this one kind of fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is our bonus, so we wanted to make it short and sweet. Just like a treat in your bag of candy.
Yeah.
What is this going to be a staple for Arthouse of Horrors to come?
Would you be plugging this back in when it comes Halloween time next year or in a couple of years? You already know my answer on mine, so.
Well, yeah.
What about you?
Listen, I enjoyed this film. I am going to make a plug for an alternate. There's a film that came out a couple years ago called The Book of Life, and
I love that movie too.
It takes a look at the Day of the Dead and Spanish American culture, and it deals with a lot of similar themes to this film, but I enjoyed that one a bit more. Maybe not as pun heavy, but that is a terrific movie, and that I would almost put in my rotation above ParaNorman, not only because I think it's a better movie, but it takes a look at another culture and kind of their interpretation of life and death and things like that in kind of a fun and accessible way. So I will make a substitution for ParaNorman in my rotation, but you guys go ahead.
Kent?
It might be worth, like, if I had a DVD player out on the porch showing movies while passing out candy. This being in a rotation with a couple other movies during trick-or-treat hours, I could see myself doing that. I might end up doing that this year. Small DVD player. Yeah.
All right, well then let's just go, let's see here. We already kind of did our geek sheet, so let's go ahead and let's call this thing. Kent, Lobster, do you agree with the critics on ParaNorman? Do you give it a pass? Do you give it a fail? Or do you give it a maybe? Lobster.
It's a maybe for me. Again, I think that there are a lot of great ideas in this film, and there is some really, really clever execution. I think maybe this is one that needs a little bit more polish, and I would have liked to have seen some ideas explored a little bit further. And again, I don't want to say that they should go the full Pixar route and like have an answer for everything and kind of like over dramatize things. Again, I think there are some other movies that tackle these subjects a little bit better, like The Book of Life, for instance. But I would rate this above certainly a Monsters, Inc. for a Halloween go-to for me. So, yeah.
Kent.
Well, let me put it this way. I give the movie a maybe because some parts of the storytelling didn't quite nail me as much. I mean, it had very good parts, very good emotional parts. What really blew me away was some of the special features I saw where they show how this movie was made. If you want to take the movie, it's a maybe. The special features are a, yeah, watch this, because this is just amazing what work went into this, what work the studio does. I mean, some people know that I've got a 3D printer over here. I do a bunch of stuff with it. They 3D printed all the characters. And some of those characters, they printed like 200 facial expressions that they just swap out of the heads. And it's just, you know how much work that is designing that? And with the 2012 printers that they're using, I'm not sure what printers they're using. I really wanted to know what they are. I started trying to research to figure out what they're using because, like, wow, these guys are blazing some amazing technological regions. It's like, damn, why? I want to watch a couple more of their movies just to go, how are they doing this? Like, it's just an amazing.
They have 3 others that you can definitely pick out.
I mean, I've got like a few days to watch another one before it's off Netflix, apparently. So, okay.
I would recommend it.
Yeah, this movie is available at your local I picked it up for $4, which is very worth it. At a local, bigger retailer that has a concentric circles going, yes. if that is your target of a film that you want. So.
All right. Well, for me, I absolutely love this film. While I do love The Book of Life, I believe that this film is slightly superior, simply just because this has characters that are a lot more relatable, a lot more emotional. I love the situation. I love the comedy that's here. It doesn't feel as forced as other animated films, but quite honestly, it just resonates with me. I think that this takes the kid who can speak to dead people to the best extent. It deals with bullying on a level that I don't see in children's films, that I think deals with it in an honest way, while at the same time kind of giving a positive message about the fact that you can get through this. And I don't know, it hit me in places emotionally, and it tells a really good story. So definite pass. Strongly recommend it. I strongly recommend all of the Laika films. Please check them out. Rent them at your Redbox, or if you have say Amazon or something like that. Netflix, if they're on there.
Or if you have a Blu-ray of Coraline somewhere that you should probably watch.
Yes.
But.
You really should watch. But
Cool.
yes, I strongly recommend it. Thank you so much for a wonderful Arthouse of Horror season. We had a great time this year. I can't wait to do this again next year. Gentlemen, it's time to get into the real horror story that is election year.
Yes.
The voting booth of horror. The phantom voting booth. Ooh. All right,
And
it's going to be an interesting few months as we wind down the year.
Yes.
So lots of fun stuff, lots of changes, good times. But for now...
Yeah, that's right. This is the MovieDude Eric.
And this is Kent.
And this is John Lobster.
Of Doom.
And Fiend.
Please leave us a positive review on iTunes.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
Legends Podcast is not affiliated with any other entity. The opinions stated in this podcast are strictly personal and do not represent the view of its sponsor or any other person or entity. No infringement is intended.